in the vast landscape of international trade, where commerce flows like rivers across borders. A significant disruption has emerged that is reshaping the North American alcohol market. Canada's response to recent United States tariff policies has created a dramatic shift in the traditional patterns of cross-border commerce, particularly in the spirits, wine, and beer industries. This economic confrontation has transformed from a policy disagreement into a full-scale trade war that is reverberating through distilleries, wineries, and breweries across America. The magnitude of this commercial upheaval becomes clear when examining the numbers that tell the story of economic disruption. American liquor sales in Canada have plummeted 62% year-on-year for the first 6 months of 2025, representing one of the most dramatic declines in cross-border trade in recent memory. This decline is not merely a statistical anomaly, but rather the result of deliberate policy decisions that have fundamentally altered the relationship between two of the world's most integrated economies. The ripple effects of this boycott extend far beyond simple trade statistics, touching the lives of workers, farmers, and business owners throughout the United States alcohol industry. The genesis of this trade confrontation lies in the complex web of tariff policies that emerged from the current administration's trade strategy. When the United States imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian imports, the northern neighbor responded with swift and decisive action. Canada on Tuesday also imposed 25% tariffs on goods imported from the USA, including wine, spirits, and beer. However, this retaliatory measure was merely the beginning of a more comprehensive response that would prove far more damaging to American alcohol producers than anyone initially anticipated. The escalation moved beyond simple tariff imposition to outright removal of American products from Canadian retail shelves. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has ordered the LCBO to strip its shelves of American products in response to the USA imposing 25% tariffs. This action by the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, which manages 688 stores licensed to sell alcohol in Canada's most populous province, sent shockwaves through the American alcohol industry. The visual impact of empty shelves where American brands once stood became a powerful symbol of the deteriorating trade relationship between the two countries. The scope of the boycott expanded rapidly as other Canadian provinces joined the movement, creating a coordinated response that amplified the economic impact. British Columbia and Nova Scotia followed Ontario's lead, systematically removing American alcohol products from their provincial liquor store systems. This coordinated provincial response transformed what might have been a localized protest into a national movement that affected American alcohol exports across the entire Canadian market. The unity of provincial governments in this action demonstrated the depth of Canadian frustration with American trade policies. For American distilleries, wineries, and breweries that had spent decades building relationships in the Canadian market, the boycott represented more than just lost sales. It threatened to undo generations of carefully cultivated brand recognition and consumer loyalty. These actions are being felt in California and threaten to upset decades of work spent gaining access to this market. The California wine industry, which had established a significant presence in Canadian markets through years of marketing efforts and relationship building, suddenly found itself cut off from one of its most important export destinations. The human element of this trade dispute becomes particularly poignant when considering the iconic American brands that have disappeared from Canadian shelves. Jack Daniel's whiskey, Maker's Mark, bourbon, and countless other products that had become household names in Canadian homes were suddenly nowhere to be found. In many Canadian liquor stores, bottles of Jack Daniel's, Maker's Mark, and other American spirits that once occupied prominent shelf space have been replaced by domestic alternatives or products from other countries entirely. The economic response from American alcohol companies has been one of alarm and urgent concern about the long-term implications of this trade disruption. Representatives from major distilleries have described the situation as unprecedented in its severity and scope. The leadership of Brown-Forman, the company behind Jack Daniel's, has publicly stated that Canada's approach of completely removing products from shelves represents a more severe challenge than traditional tariff barriers, which at least allow products to remain available to consumers willing to pay higher prices. Meanwhile, the Canadian domestic alcohol industry has experienced an unexpected windfall from this trade dispute. Ontario, the largest provincial market, has seen domestic alcohol sales rise by 14% as consumers, whether by choice or necessity, have shifted their purchasing patterns toward locally produced beverages. This surge in domestic sales represents a significant boost to Canadian distilleries, wineries, and breweries that had previously competed with well-established American brands for market share. The boycott has created opportunities for Canadian producers to expand their market presence and build stronger relationships with consumers who might have otherwise chosen American alternatives. However, the trade landscape has not been uniform across all Canadian provinces, revealing the complex political and economic considerations that influence regional responses to international trade disputes. Alberta, known for its more conservative political stance and closer economic ties to American energy markets, has taken a different approach to the alcohol boycott. While still implementing retaliatory tariffs, Alberta has chosen to resume purchases of American alcohol products, albeit at significantly higher prices due to the imposed tariffs. This decision reflects the delicate balance that provincial governments must strike between showing solidarity with federal trade policies and maintaining economic relationships that benefit their local economies. The broader implications of this alcohol boycott extend far beyond the beverage industry, serving as a microcosm of the larger trade tensions that have emerged between the United States and Canada. Trade experts and economists have noted that the alcohol sector, while significant in its own right, represents just one component of a much larger trade relationship worth hundreds of billions of dollars annually. The intensity of the response in the alcohol sector suggests the potential for similar actions in other industries if trade tensions continue to escalate. International trade relationships, much like fine wines, require years to develop their full complexity and character, but can be damaged quickly by harsh treatment. The American alcohol industry's decades-long investment in the Canadian market, including marketing campaigns, distribution networks, and brand development, has been disrupted in a matter of months. The question now facing both industries and governments is whether these relationships can be restored to their previous strength once the current trade dispute is resolved, or whether permanent damage has been done to consumer preferences and market structures. The ripple effects of this boycott continue to spread through supply chains, affecting not only the primary alcohol producers, but also the entire ecosystem of businesses that support the industry. American farmers who grow grapes, grains, and other raw materials for alcohol production are feeling the impact of reduced demand. Transportation companies that specialized in cross-border shipping of alcoholic beverages have seen significant reductions in their business volumes. Marketing agencies, distributors, and retail specialists, who had built their expertise around the Canadian market, are now forced to redirect their efforts toward other regions or domestic opportunities. Looking toward the future, the resolution of this trade dispute will likely require careful diplomatic work and potentially significant concessions from both sides. The alcohol industry, with its deep cultural significance and strong emotional connections to consumers, has proven to be particularly effective as a tool of economic diplomacy. As negotiations continue between American and Canadian trade representatives, the fate of bourbon on Canadian shelves, Canadian whiskey in American bars, and the broader relationship between these two neighboring economies hangs in the balance. The outcome of this dispute will not only determine the future of alcohol trade between these countries, but will also set precedents for how trade wars are fought and resolved in an increasingly interconnected global economy. The story of Canada's alcohol boycott serves as a compelling reminder that in the modern world, trade relationships are about more than just numbers on spreadsheets. They represent connections between people, cultures, and communities. As both nations work toward resolution of their differences, the hope remains that the bonds forged over shared toasts and celebrations will ultimately prove stronger than the temporary barriers erected by political and economic disagreements. This complex trade dispute between two of the world's closest neighbors continues to evolve, with implications that extend far beyond the alcohol industry itself. The 62 to 67% decline in American alcohol exports to Canada represents more than just economic statistics. It symbolizes the fragility of international relationships in an era of increasing trade nationalism. As we continue to monitor these developments, it becomes clear that the resolution of this dispute will require diplomatic finesse, economic and perhaps most importantly, a recognition that prosperity flows best when borders remain open to commerce and cooperation. What are your thoughts on this escalating trade war between the United States and Canada? Do you believe these boycotts represent effective economic diplomacy? Or do they risk causing more harm than good to both nations? Share your perspective in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe to Wes's Best For more in-depth analysis of the economic and political developments shaping North America, hit that notification bell to stay updated on the latest trade disputes, policy changes, and their real-world impacts on businesses and consumers across the continent.